Peace, everyone. I pray all is well. I'm going to be talking about depression. I'm going to be talking about health and wellness. When we are going through high levels of stress, our body is operating from the sympathetic nervous system. So the sympathetic nervous system is activated and upregulated when we are perceiving a threat. So even if this threat is not necessarily a life or death matter, even if it's not that serious, our body will still respond in such a way. And oftentimes, when we are going about our lives, it is common that certain stressors tend to pile up on top of one another, especially if this is something that you're used to. But from a biological standpoint, you will continue to operate from this sympathetic state of being. When these stressors pile on, we become more vulnerable to future perceived threats. So what I'm describing is exactly how your intention or your unconscious attention to things will continue to perpetuate things in your life. Will create more opportunity for this. So even if it wasn't something that was going to make you vulnerable to a threat, let's say your attention was on something positive, then this will increase the likelihood that you will perceive more of that positive thing in the future. But when it comes to stress, when it comes to addiction, because oftentimes we get addicted to these emotions, we get addicted to the breathing patterns that are taking place while you are in these states of stress, which is why the breath is such a powerful tool. Now, from my own experience, I know what it's like to be in a state of depression, anxiety, and to literally not want to do anything, not know what to do. It's debilitating to be in a state of depression. And it's really important to be aware of all of the things, all of the behaviors that actually lead you to a state of depression. So we didn't just wake up in this state of depression. We did things, we experienced things that made us behave a certain way, that made us think a certain way, that made us act a certain way to get to that point. Back to the breath. Breathing is such a powerful tool, and it's so simple. You want to go from a sympathetic state of being to a parasympathetic state of being. Oftentimes when there is a high level of stress, maybe you're having an anxiety attack, maybe you are just having a breakdown, like crying or just feeling very overwhelmed, all those things that come with this term depression, it can be hard to go from that state of instability back into a state of stability. What's going on is you're going from a sympathetic state of being to a parasympathetic state of being, from fight or flight into this calm, relaxed state. And ideally, we will be preventing ever even getting into that state of being. Sometimes we don't have control over that, but oftentimes the stressors in our life create such a state of sympathetic operation that is not really necessary, but we are perceiving it as a major threat. Our perspective, our belief behind the stressor is creating a very intense response and reaction, which is understandable, and that will play out in various different ways because we're all different. We're coming from different backgrounds, we're coming from different life experiences and influences. But what I feel is so important is prevention. We have to prevent ever even getting into that state of being. When we are in a very tight situation where you're already there, and these would be the moments where I would look up online, what can I do? How can I help myself in this moment? And seldom did I ever find a solution. This is partially why I'm making these videos, because I recall being in that position where I really needed something now. I needed help now. So what you can do to downregulate the sympathetic nervous system quickly and effectively is to utilize the breath. This will help regulate your heart rate. This will redirect your focus. It'll put you in a sort of meditative state, which is just, putting your attention onto the breath. Inhale. And then a long exhale out of your nose. We're always breathing through the nose to get into this parasympathetic state of being. And so you can do 3, you can do 6, you can do 9. And you're going to exhale out your nose longer than you inhaled. Longer and longer exhales is the key. And you could even do 6 inhales. You can alternate. You can do 1. As long as you're able to exhale for as long as possible. Then you can go into 2. And this is a very powerful way to regulate your heart and get you back into that parasympathetic flow. Not only is it a way to help you when you are in dire need, but it's also a powerful way to prevent ever even getting into that state. Because when you have control over your breath, you have control over your heart rate, and you have better control over your thoughts. And you could be intentional with your breath. And now I want to say, I'm going to leave links in the description. I highly recommend that you check it out and that you explore some of the links, specifically when it comes to the Black Airbender, Devon Graham. He is an alchemical breath worker, and he teaches all about the alchemy of breath work. He teaches about breath work itself and how all of these healing modalities that we may use, they are simply tools. The breath is the most powerful and life-giving power that we have. And when we utilize it intentionally, when we utilize it to prevent these things, you will see that your life actually changes in a very profound way. And there are many people who are saying the same thing as they work with Devon. There's also many researchers who agree and who have studied this and have seen the way that parasympathetic style breathing actually helps your body in a very profound way. I want to go back a little and talk about the perceptions that we have of certain stressors. And the way that when you perceive a threat, you become more vulnerable to future threats and stressors. If we can take the time to practice controlling our response through the breath and through our perception, in the moment that you become aware or you become triggered by something, that is where you will find your power. But if we're not aware of our ability to utilize our perspective, to utilize our breath, to prevent going down a path that will perpetuate these stressors, then it's more likely than not that you will be a disservice to yourself. And so I'm going to give you a few examples. Let's say that you wake up one day and you realize that you had a bill to pay. And you completely forgot that you had to pay this bill, and you only had enough money to pay what it was that you already paid. And so you didn't have a backup plan, you didn't have anything saved, and immediately your thought process is to freak out, is to just completely lose yourself. This is something that sends you into a state of anxiety, into a state of fear and panic. In that moment, you can become aware that you are going down this path of panic, of fear. And instead of following that path, you can choose to take a breath, even though you don't know how you're going to come up with the money, even though this is not a desired situation and you feel genuine fear. It's okay to feel the fear. It's okay to be aware of something negative. But how we handle that and how we perceive this negative situation is going to result in how you experience your life and how your life reflects back to you. In that moment, you become aware. The situation makes you feel uncomfortable. You choose to go into the breath. Maybe we'll do 3 inward breaths. And then you exhale. You can affirm something to yourself in that moment as well. With this breath, I choose to remain calm. Immediately, you are shifting the energy and the trajectory of the outcome of this situation. That's how powerful we are. The way that we respond is going to affect the results in our life. So it is clear as day that freaking out and panicking will not help that situation at all. It will not create more money for you. It will not help you. It will not empower you. It will not allow you to find solutions. And it will most likely create more panic and more fear and more future instances where you are experiencing this sort of undesirable situation and life experience, right? So how can we shift our perspective in that moment? Getting ourselves grounded and centering ourselves is a very powerful thing to do. And that's enough. But you can take it a step further and you can start to change your perspective. So instead of just automatically deeming the fact that you don't know where this money is going to come from as a bad thing, you can look at it as something that is not so bad. You can say, oh, well, I don't know where this money is going to come from, if I'm going to be able to find this money. Our minds automatically think that we're doomed. But what if the opposite was the case? Whether you do or you don't find the money, the one thing that remains the same is that you don't know if you're going to find it, or you don't know if you're not going to find it. Or you don't know if you're going to earn it, or you don't know if you're not going to earn it. And at the end of the day, it's like, we're going to figure out a solution. Everything's going to be okay. You're probably not going to die. And if you don't die, you're going to have to figure it out, right? Something's going to have to happen in which you are going to be able to pay that somehow, some way. Unless you continue to choose to go down the path in which you are just panicking and just disempowering yourself to that degree. And you can relate this to many different areas of your life. It doesn't just have to be about money. It could be about relationships. It could be about the simplest things in your life. And when you start to empower yourself in a direction where you actually are finding the solutions, where you're actually aligning to the solutions, you will see that the solutions are all around you and within you. You will start to realize that everything is here for you, that this universe is designed to give to you. But you have to be able to work with it. You have to be able to recognize that within you. And it's very challenging to recognize that within you when you are more geared towards this loop where you're more programmed to be in fear, where you're more programmed to fear the unknown instead of to embrace the unknown. It always makes me laugh because when I talk about these things, I realize how simple it is. And even when I communicate simple information, I find that many individuals know, right? But to be able to actually practice, to be able to actually become aware, to actually have self-control in those moments where you are vulnerable is a completely different thing. I encourage everyone to become aware of the power of your breath, to become aware of these ways that we can prevent panic, that we can prevent prolonging this state of fear and this sympathetic state of being when the stressors of life become apparent to you or when you perceive a threat in your life. And I encourage you to put your energy back into what you do have control over. Because worrying about what you don't have control over will not allot you any solutions. But what you do have control over, and when you are intentional with that and you are positive in that respect, or even just neutral, you'll be able to better navigate your emotions. You'll be able to find solutions and be receptive to a better possible outcome for yourself. So I pray that this was helpful in any way. Feel free to like, comment, share to anybody that might benefit from watching this. And remember the power of your breath and utilize these practices in moments where you're not experiencing stress, so that when the stress comes, you are more in alignment with that self-control and with the power of your breath. Peace, everyone.